I find it incredibly hard to date to the point where I actually can't get dates. So there's two perspectives on that. So if I were to go meet somebody, it's kind of hard because I don't like random people to know my real name. So obviously I'm meeting them as Adriana Chechik, and that's extremely hard. It's intimidating. I've had guys literally walk out on me when I've met them because they're so intimidated by me. And then also I've done some of the most extreme sex acts on camera that guys can't swallow or get past. I currently do kind of live like a little bit of a lonely life. There's another aspect where guys only want to date me to like show me off to other people or their friends. They immediately treat me like the Adriana Chechik like experience, right? So like if I was going to go meet a guy, like they would never hold my hand or anything. The first thing they do is they try and like have sex with me. So it's really like disheartening, to be honest, and I've kind of just given up. I feel like, sadly, I actually feel like I might not ever find like a boyfriend like that. I might just end up being alone forever.
Now, who could have seen this coming? Putting yourself out there, getting piped 24/7, and men don't want to deal with you, and you can't get a decent man to commit. Who could have seen that coming? Complete curveball, am I right? A woman known for participating in the most foul, debauched, depraved, public acts of indecency can't get a decent man to stand by her. The few, even possibly halfway decent guys who are like, oh, hey, why not? I'll give it a shot. When they finally see this woman in person, are just like, oh man, it's too weird not seeing her on her hands and knees, and they turn tail and walk out. That's not just insecurity, because they aren't man enough to handle your choices. That's common sense. They're facing up to the fact that they're now face to face with a person who's done these things. And the other half of the guys want to treat her as a novelty. Don't want to hold her hand. Don't want to kiss her. Don't want to do all those romantic, affectionate things a man is willing to do with a woman he actually respects and loves and views as a worthy partner. Why? Because they have seen her absolutely humiliated and used by countless other men. They know that's what she's been through. This culture will have you believe that there is no significance to sexual actions, consenting sexual actions. They will have you believe that there is no significance and no consequence to these actions. That these actions say nothing about a woman's character, that she has participated in XYZ demeaning, degrading sexual act. Yet the scripture teaches, like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman who shows no discretion. Her looks don't mean anything after she's done stuff like this so publicly. Her worth, quote unquote, as a unique human being, doesn't redeem her from what she's done. Her actions will follow her for the rest of her life, and justifiably so, because no self-respecting man would ever partner with a woman like this. It would be a humiliation. And liberals can't understand this because liberals don't understand anything. They've deconstructed everything. They don't understand the aspect of conquest that is present in sex, that is inherent in the sexual act itself. You just gotta call it like it is and stay immune to the mind rot. What can I say? Or else you'll end up with a whore for a girlfriend, or worse yet, a wife.
Stephen, you described the traditional marriage of two young people, or compared it to a woman selling her sexuality. Exactly. It just shows that you're so desperate to cast traditional marriage specifically in a negative light, and it's just simply not true.
Okay. If you're done with the virtue signaling,
there's no virtue
said,
signaling.
Of course
what are you talking
it was.
about?
You dare talk about marriage like that? What she said was doing OnlyFans at an early age and opting for that before even trying to get educated or work is a sad thing. And I said I would say the exact same thing for a woman that at 18 or 19 says, I'm just going to find a man to get married to.
Why are you discrediting that those women have full agency to make a decision?
Why are you discrediting that women that do OnlyFans at 18 or 19 have a full agency to do it? It's an acceptable
acknowledge
decision.
that they have full agency.
Oh, well then we have no disagreement. I don't know what our disagreement is then.
You're comparing the two as you're saying they can be described as the same thing.
It's about signing up for a really hard contract that's going to last for a very long time.
Yeah.
Well, same
That's
with
what it
OnlyFans.
is.
That's going to be forever.
Yeah, I know. Same with OnlyFans. That's my whole point. That was my point.
I'll say this again and again and again. I do not know how Destiny has any fans. He is a deeply predatory person who argues, all his positions are argued based on how he believes they relate to his own self-interest. He is an entirely self-interested person. I can't stress that enough. And this is obviously ridiculous because Destiny's making the point like, oh man, these trad cons don't get it because marriage is a lot of commitment and it lasts a long time. But so is OnlyFans. That's a big commitment and your pics are on the internet forever. You know, fundamentally the same thing. Building a deep personal relationship with another human being who you want to spend the rest of your life with is different than milking simps for cash. Can we admit that? Can we acknowledge that? That these two relationships are qualitatively distinct, are different, are not the same, are not equal? Am I the last sane person on earth? Like, how would you feel if your grandmother had been a porn star and there were a bunch of other boomers back in the day seeing her naked before she married your grandfather? Would you feel comfortable with that? Would that sit at ease in your heart, knowing that it happened? I'd like to hope not, but you really never can tell with how degraded the American mind is these days.
What makes a man's chances increase to procreate? Acquiring status, resources, being attractive. Fair? Can we all agree on that?
No, data-wise, you're just wrong. Poor men have more kids than wealthy men.
I didn't say what is actually going to lead to. I said what increases your chances.
How can it increase your chance if it doesn't actually do it? Poor men have more baby mamas. Poor men have more children. Poor men have a higher likelihood to pass their genes on. Isn't this the point of like idiocracy of the movie?
They cannot sustain and maintain a.
They don't need to sustain and maintain.
The whole reason I even went through that display is to show that men derive fulfillment from success and acquiring status and resources, which increases their likelihood of going up in the sexual marketplace. Women get fulfillment from having a child and family with a man they love, admire, and respect, and securing his commitment. Can a woman derive fulfillment from a career? Of course, but a majority of women will not.
I understand what you're saying, but I can only repeat it so many times. Like, none of the data agrees with you. Or,
no. Since the 1970s, female lack of happiness has gone up.
How are you guys going to decry studies I use and then try to appeal to one of the most difficult to study social phenomenon of like happiness and satisfaction? Like, if you want to study happiness and satisfaction, every single first world country dramatically outpaces every single third world country where they're having more kids, where they live a more fundamental life, where they don't have birth control or cell phones. But like, studying happiness is one of the most difficult social phenomenon to study.
I know correlation is a causation, but feminism got stronger since the 70s, and women's happiness rates have went down alongside it.
Poor people having more kids doesn't mean your average poor person is actually having more sex than your average rich person. Poor men have more kids, hence poor men actually have more opportunities to procreate. No, genius. All this proves is that poor people are more impulsive and less likely to use contraceptives. This doesn't mean that women aren't actually attracted to wealth and status and power, but you have these professional debaters like Destiny who just obfuscate this point because liberals buy into it for some reason, because people don't want to actually understand human hierarchy as it is. They don't want to look at the real world. They can't handle hard truths. Now, speaking of delusional people who live in a fictional world, let's continue.
A 5th grade teacher was just fired in Cobb County, just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, for reading a book to her class that, quote unquote, considers gender something other than binary. That's right, in Cobb County, just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, Katie Renderly, a 5th grade teacher, was fired because she read the book My Shadow is Purple to her class. Recently in Georgia, they have passed laws that forbid teachers from establishing political viewpoints. And in a tribunal, they held up the book and put it on trial. And they determined that because the book uses they, them pronouns, it considers gender something other than binary. And because the book does that, and because she read that book to her classroom, it is worth firing her for doing that. This is not the only time where this has happened. In recent months, teachers have been fired for being LGBTQ. In Florida, we saw a teacher fired for showing a Disney movie that has a gay character in it. We saw another teacher fired for mentioning that she was gay. In South Carolina, we saw a teacher fired for having an article about LGBTQ people. And in fact, Florida's new Don't Say Gay or Trans bill actually makes it so that trans teachers have now received memos that state that they cannot use their pronouns if they are not consistent with their assigned sex at birth. These book bans and targeting of teachers are an attempt to remove LGBTQ people from public life and to claim that we are somehow dangerous for kids. I want to leave you with a passage from the book. My dad has a shadow that's blue as a berry, and my mom's is as pink as a blossoming cherry. There's only those choices, a 2 or a 1, but mine's is quite different. It's both and it's none. Books should not be banned.
Oh, how far the Overton window has shifted, that a person like this can even exist, and then communicate this message to other people as though it's absurd that the rest of the world isn't comfortable with classrooms being converted into revolutionary protest cells. The balls on this person, both literally and figuratively, must be immense.
We as men, we don't know you. We don't know if you're worth it yet. So we're not going to pay to find out. I don't get this pushback against equally investing into the start of a relationship. I bet most of you would describe yourselves as feminists. I bet most of you would say you believe in gender equality, equality between the sexes. But it's funny, when that check comes, y'all are really quiet about being feminists and believing in equality.
But back in the day, they used to provide for women because they worshipped women.
I don't think it's because they worshipped women. It's because women provided something very unique, solely and exclusively to their husband, that is not really happening today. For instance, their body.
What? Oh. Women are still the bearers of life.
Yeah, but the woman's body is supposed to be a temple for the man.
Okay.
So much disagreements.
This law of equality suddenly disappears because women only employ it one-sidedly. They only employ it when they're attempting to acquire more privileges at men's expense. And suddenly they forget about it when it's their turn to be held accountable. Men worshipped women back then. You look in older generations and you really don't see this. I don't see any worship of women in the boomers that I know who are based. And these days there's now no expectation for women to be exclusive to one man, as it was in the old days. In every healthy covenanted nation, women were expected to be virgins upon their marriage day. They were expected to save themselves for their husbands, because it was wrong for a man to have his daughter be whoring in his own house. That was immoral, that was awful, that was a tragedy, that deprecated her own value. But women are the bearers of life. Women were created to serve men. Women have a special and important role in creation, but they are ultimately subordinate to men. This is how God has designed the world. This is not a world of complementarianism, but of biblical patriarchy. And you are not obligated to marry a woman who is not a virgin. One of the main reasons the West is apostate and that the social life of Americans is constantly deteriorating is because if you walk into an average church in your town, that pastor will not teach you the law, how to get your finances right, or the proper way to relate to women. A pastor is a person who's supposed to be like your spiritual life coach, and more than half the time, they've never even held a full-time job. And here is another fun fact before we get to our next clip. All mainstream Christianity is not in line with the actual gospel message, and in fact incorporates some concepts from Neoplatonic philosophy, one of which is the immortal soul. God breathed life into Adam, and then he became a living soul. It's not that Adam was given a soul and then his body was brought to life. It's that the union of God's breath and this shape made out of the earth in the form of a human was a living soul. The breath of life and the body together are a living soul. Neither is conscious in and of itself. And the reason I'm telling you this and why it's important is because leftists and people who are not professing Christians will still make appeals to this concept, even if they really don't understand that's what they're doing, in order to justify treating men and women equally. And this idea, this argument, has actually been at the heart of the women's rights movement for well over a century. If leftists were actually pure materialists, which they're not, there would really be no basis for equality because men and women obviously have observable average differences in psychology, physiology, immediate interests and goals at different points in their lives. The list goes on and on. And even if you talk to conservative evangelical Christians about this, many of them will agree with this woman. in part because they're trying to appeal to modern sensibilities which are heavily influenced by leftism, and as a result they teach compatibilism and not biblical patriarchy as it is in the scripture, but then also because this argument makes sense to them. Yet the scripture teaches that the dead are unconscious in the grave until the resurrection. Anyway, on to the next video.
Today is a national day of action around the country for LGBTQ students, LGBTQ educators, allies, and others. We are honoring the Day of Silence, which GLSEN is also referring to this year as the National Day of No Silence, in order to bring attention to LGBTQ+ voices and lives that are silenced by hate, bias, bullying, and harassment. According to GLSEN, 82% of LGBTQ+ students experienced firsthand harassment or bullying in their school. 71% of students reported that their classrooms did not include any LGBTQ+ topics. And more than 30% of LGBTQ+ students have reported missing school because they felt unsafe or uncomfortable. These are among the many reasons that observing Day of Silence and other days of action is especially important this year.
Does anyone feel safe with this woman teaching their kids? Do you honestly believe she can give a fair, unbiased, and measured assessment of history or a particular issue? Leftists will try and cover for this and act like, oh man, conservatives are in a moral panic about these woke teachers, you know, it's not really that big an issue. But how many of these videos do we have to see, before it's, I don't know what percentage off the top of my head. I know that like 80-something% of public school teachers already are Democrats, so no wonder they're more likely to be activists. So if they aren't an activist themselves, they probably don't have too big a problem watching a coworker engage in this kind of behavior, propagandizing to students.
And who was it who called us crazy when we said that men would start competing in women's beauty pageants?
This is so stupid, man. Women don't own... First of all, women don't own beauty pageants. What is she supposed to do? Compete in a men's beauty pageant? There's no other option. People who are beautiful should be able to compete in a freaking gosh darn beauty pageant. I mean, come on. Like what are you worried about fairness? Because, come on. This is just silly. Like, let's just stop talking about this. I mean, come on. It's just like, seriously? Seriously? Like, Finster could compete in that beauty pageant and probably win top 10. And he identifies as a man. But what is he going to do? Compete in a men's beauty pageant? There's no option. Women can compete in bodybuilding competitions. Where are the men's beauty pageants? There are none. So, shush. And let this freaking Miss Netherlands woman win her prize in peace. Bye.
First of all, can this person even adequately be described as beautiful? Passing maybe in the right light? With some camera tricks and some extensive photo editing? With tons of makeup applied? We all know this choice was politically motivated, insincere, and to allow a person like this to even participate in a competition of this nature is a declaration of belief that you think this person is something other than what they actually are. Anyway, that's it for this video, and Red Channels will catch you in the next one.